Test. Can you hear me? Test. Testing.
Like, are you getting anything? Are you guys getting anything? No. Yeah. Go.
Test, test, test.
Mic.
Audio. Mic. Okay. Test, 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 test. Okay.
You want me to test the other one as well?
Testing, testing, test. Good? Okay.
The only thing is the PowerPoints that we don't want to put them on. They're gonna freak out if they see what we're doing on our side. So she wants her laptop up there because she wants to refer to it. I don't know. She has like one of her slides she wants to look at. So she's gonna have her laptop with her. She's gonna set that up. So she has her laptop. She needs to look at her. I think she has notes on it. So
what you're saying is don't show what you're seeing
yeah.
there. I mean, I
Okay, Andrea, even though you explained how to maneuver it, you might be just ready to run
all right.
to help, just because
Yeah.
it's a different generation, okay?
Yeah, no, yeah. Where's the clicker?
But everybody's not Dr. Allen, so.
Right there.
Well, if it's a different school, she doesn't. Open up the runner show on there.
Mic check. Mic check. 1 2. Check 1 2.
Good morning, everyone. Just a quick reminder that the program will be beginning in 5 minutes.
and that U hour is normally at noon. I also know that another wave of people might show up at noon. I also know that many of you have meetings and classroom teachings at 1, so we are considerate of that because this is our college campus. I just wanted to come to the stage. I know that folks are also getting food. Please eat the food, please enjoy. But I wanted to say welcome. My name is Ariel Stevenson, but before I begin, I want to note that at this event, we strive to do our part and support our strategic value of sustainability as a campus. So we have QR codes on the tables that you can review the program or review the program digitally. Does that make sense? So they're at your little table holders. Just use your phones. If you don't have one, you can share with somebody. What will be easy is that the program flow is mirrored to the program. Does that make sense? Okay. So, again, my name is Ariel Stevenson. I am the Deputy Diversity Officer in the Office of Inclusive Excellence, and I am pleased to welcome each of you today. Oh, I was getting claps. Thank you. Thank you. I am pleased to welcome each of you today. Those who are here for the first time, thank you and welcome. Those who are returning, this is a celebration. Thank you and welcome. We come together for All Peoples Luncheon annually to reflect upon our commitment to inclusive excellence, to celebrate our student champion, and to validate the work you do in the name of inclusive excellence on our campus and in our communities. I want to personally thank each of you as our student nominees who are also here for your good, hard work. Your contribution to this work is important and very necessary, not just for the campus community, but also for our future communities. I also want to acknowledge each of you as faculty, staff, administrators, students, community members who are here, and those who are with us today virtually who were not able to be in person. This is a reminder with your representation that it reminds me that with all of your representation of the power of CSUSM. As I conclude my welcome, I would love to welcome Jaylee Martin to the stage for the land acknowledgement. She is a first-year student studying business marketing. She is from the Morongo Band of Mission Indians and Torres Martinez Desert Cahuilla Indians. Thank you, Jaylee.
Miahuen, hello. We acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory and homelands of the Luiseño Payacahuicham people. It is also important to acknowledge that this land remains the shared space among the Cupeño, Kumeyaay, and Epai peoples. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. I have the distinct privilege of getting to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Oswald Allen, our Chief Diversity Officer here at CSUSM. And as I thought about what I wanted to say to introduce Dr. Allen, I couldn't come up with the right words to capture the impact that he has had here at CSUSM and throughout his entire career. You all have his biography in the program, and let's be honest, you can probably Google information about him as well, so I didn't want to just share a list of his accomplishments, of which there are many, or talk about the direct programs that he's had here at CSUSM. Rather, I wanted to share about his work and his intentions and the way that he approaches his daily work here at CSUSM. And I've been fortunate to work with Dr. Allen and learn from him over the past 2 years. And my collaboration with him has made a big impact on me as an educator and as a person. So I want to thank you for allowing me to learn from you and allowing me to work with you regularly on this campus. At his core, Dr. Allen is just a good person. He places the highest value on people, relationships, and fairness as the most vital elements for instigating change at CSUSM. He is deeply invested in making an impact at CSUSM to ensure that everyone here can share their voice and feel a deep sense of belonging to our campus and to our communities. He is intentional in his work to ensure it's results-driven, equity-minded, and moves forward our institution so we can continue to serve as a national model for social mobility and inclusive excellence. And more than that, he's approachable and just really easy to talk to. I know personally when I'm talking to administrators as a faculty member, I often get this sense of nervousness, but he calms me and helps me understand the importance of this work in the way that we lead it on our campus. And his leadership in the work of the Office of Inclusive Excellence and his amazing team has helped us navigate complex issues as a campus and will help us continue to establish policies, practices, and initiatives to create an inclusive environment that continues to empower every member of our community to thrive. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Oswald Allen to the stage.
Thank you, Dr. Artemita. Wow, we are here. We are here. That is a beautiful thing to say, to be able to say, to be present, and to be together. I want to welcome you all to the 9th annual CSUSM All Peoples Luncheon. We are able to celebrate life. That is special. We're able to celebrate life. We're able to celebrate humanity first, the gift of life, and the values of freedom, fairness, and justice. And it's so interesting that Dr. Armenta mentioned that, because that's what I have right here on my notes. So I really appreciate you all for giving us an opportunity to celebrate life together by being here. With that said, I just want to ask you to join me in a moment of silence. There's conflict happening all across the globe. There are some places that are more known than others, but human challenge is everywhere. Particularly in this moment, the Israel and Gaza conflict is what I would like to ask us just to take 30 seconds and just pause. Okay, thank you. 30 seconds can be long when you're intentional, but it's short when you're studying for a final. I want to take a quick moment and thank our staff, those that have provided the food, those that are back there trying to make sure things are taken care of, our tech team, our event staff. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. We have faculty here. I'm going to ask our faculty if you just kind of raise your hand. If you're here, just raise your hand. These are our faculty that are representing. Our staff, whoever you are, raise your hand, please. Okay. Our deans and directors and administrators, department heads, AVPs, and vice presidents and provosts. Raise your hands. All right. How about our students? Are you here? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, students, for helping us be the best that we can be. The Office of Inclusive Excellence team has worked really hard to please me, okay? And I can be a hard person to please, I'm learning. I learned that today. Alejandrina Mercado, Cheryl Landon, Lucero Ordonez, Ariel Stevenson, our student staff, you saw Kenneth Starkey. Raise your hands, let's thank them. Yeah, yes. I always say they wind me up and send me out, but it's not easy. It's not an easy task. Our faculty fellows, if you're here, we want to thank you. Ms. Marilyn McWilliams, where are you? Yeah. We're going to express appreciation throughout the day after we leave here. That's very important. Let others know that you're alive. Marilyn. And everyone else. So reflect on 3 things: your personal life, your community, and your workplace, the campus. There's at least one person in every one of those areas that you love and appreciate. Give them a nod of appreciation from your spirit, okay? Let them know that you love them. I would also like to thank our representatives from the following organizations. I do wear glasses. Mana de North County, San Diego, Mar Costa College, Vista Community Clinic, Elevate Youth, NAACP, North County African American Women's Association, Council on American Islamic Relations of San Diego, Kaiser Permanente of San Diego, and we have Microsoft here too, so let's thank them for being here, for joining us today. Now, when y'all might have noticed when you were coming in that there were these cameras, handheld, I don't know what they're called, but they were recording President Neufeld. And if you don't know President Neufeld, she's not necessarily one to say, hey, I want to be in front of the camera. But she certainly will lead. That's without a doubt. And if it requires her to be in front of a camera to represent this amazing community, then that's what she will do. And when she came to this campus, she had the intent of representing this community to the best of her ability, but not just by herself. She has cultivated a trust and a confidence over the 4+ years, maybe 5 years, that she's been here. And that community not only is willing to follow her, but also work and lead from the places that they are. That's from our student leaders to our directors, to our AVPs, our provosts, our vice presidents, including myself. And her whole focus is all about students. It's all about student development, student success, and helping students move from one area in their experience to another area where they can have more opportunity and impact their families and their communities. And the essence of her is all about really just helping people. It's not any more complicated than that. And this institution in higher education is the landscape and the vehicle that she has chosen to give her time and her talent and her energy to. And it's a pleasure for me to invite her to the stage as she celebrates All Peoples Luncheon and presents the President's Student Champion Award for Inclusive Excellence and Diversity. Join me in welcoming our president, Dr. Ellen Neufeld.
Good afternoon. There we go. I heard Ariel. Anybody else in the room? Well, one of the things that I don't know why that this ever comes as a surprise to me, but sometimes, I don't know if this ever happens to you, I'm walking around, I'm doing what, I'm handling the moment of the moment, whatever I think might be important in that moment, which really may not be all that important. And then I come to an event like this, like I did today, and it really stops me in my tracks. It stops me from looking inward and helps me look up and outward for our beautiful campus and community partners that come together to really say that we are committed to moving forward in an inclusive manner. And the way in which people greeted and saw each other, it was a family reunion. And if you're new to this particular family reunion, I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that you're welcome here, that this reunion is for everyone. And there really is no place I'd rather be when it comes down to it than to be right here. And one of the things I heard as I was walking around, and yes, I do walk around normally, but today I was walking around with like a whole group of new friends that were with me, and I was feeling a little bit embarrassed, bluntly, because I wanted you to know, if I was seeing you out there, that I was excited to see you, and yet at the same time, I needed to ask you if you were comfortable with my new entourage as we go. But while I was walking around and hearing from you out there, one of the things I heard everywhere I went was how wonderful somebody else was and how much somebody else had given to the moment. You know, I heard, about how Dr. Oswald Allen is not just leading here, but leading with our speaker, who you're about to hear from, in all 23 campuses, and how we move forward with inclusive excellence, all 23 campuses of the California State University system, if you were wondering what I was referring to. I heard about how Ariel Stevenson was doing double duty and was in one meeting and going to the next to make sure that this lunch was a lunch for all. And I've learned this from Dr. Allen. She wasn't making sure it was a perfect lunch. She was making sure it was an excellent lunch, right? Yes, I learned that from Dr. Allen. He teaches me every day. Cheryl Landon welcomed me and made sure that I knew where I was sitting and that I would, and attended. She has this whole lunch, and she attended to my needs and made sure I knew what was happening for me each and every step. And I know that I'm the president, but I noticed that she didn't just do that for me. Excuse me, I got so excited I lost my voice. And then there's Lucero, who is also in the Office of Inclusive Excellence, who every day works behind the scenes, making sure that everybody has what they need. And so many of you came from across the campus and contributed in some way, shape, or form. And to our community partners that are here with you today, and I got to see a few on the way in, you've helped make us better. Many of you have been very willing, I guess I'm staring at you, but I won't call you out today, but I have been very willing to have some very open and honest conversations with our campus community and with me, and I am grateful from the bottom of my heart for that, because when I stand up here today, I don't stand up here saying that we're perfect. I frankly know there is a lot of work to do. None of us need hide from that. I know that there are days when I get up in the morning and I am extremely concerned about something that happened on our campus, in our classroom, or the outcomes for a student that should not be if we are going to be who we say we aspire to be. And at the same time, I come here saying that what I know when I look in this room is that we're all committed to it, to pushing and growing and having the hard conversations and moving through it and owning that there's work to do as we move through that. And for that, I thank each of you from the bottom of my heart, as sincerely as I know how to put words, that you are working together. But we're all working together with hard conversations, with conflict and debate, to say, we have more work to do, and we're going to keep pushing and growing. And there will always be more work to do, and we are going to be committed to it. And I want you to know that your president is committed to it. And I am not perfect. I doubt I'm excellent, but I am determined. So there we are. Last week, I just wanted to mention a few things that I have gotten to see on this campus just in this semester, which really is amazing because I was just in DC for 2 days and felt like I was in DC for 400 years. I'm just really ready to not get up at 3 a.m. Pacific time for a few days anymore. But last week I had the opportunity to attend one of our arts and lectures events, and it was sponsored by our Center for Contemplative Practices in partnership with so many other areas on campus, because that's how it's done. We heard from Dr. Jinpa, a longtime English translator for the Dalai Lama and a renowned expert in the field of contemplative practices. You know, some of you were there, and along with me. I'm going to tell you something that's a little bit funny. So I came up here with some notes from here, and since I flew in last night, I needed these notes. And I have a blank screen in front of me, but you know what? That's never fazed me a day in my life. Margaret said, fine. Oh, some words just came out, but who really cares, right? Until we do the very important part of introducing our awardee, then I want to make sure those words are in front of me to not miss anything. But I was, and he spoke about compassion. He spoke about how really the science of human compassion really is what furthers how we work together, and in our world, how much we need that. A lot of his work is in the healthcare industry and what it means when a nurse or a physician shows sincere compassion for what they are doing and for each other, and how it changes healthcare outcomes and outlook. And in my mind, he relayed that to education. And I thought about what that means and how much our world needs compassion. That doesn't mean that we don't hold each other accountable or that we use it as an excuse not to do better. But to have compassion for humanity is something that is sorely needed. And I was so moved that we brought him here to have that conversation, and so many of you were in the room. I also got to, I think I got a few words here, so we'll see if it works out. But if it doesn't, that's never stopped me. I also got a chance to see a play last week, Detroit 67. And it was directed by Sean Hurd. And we had 5 talented students in the cast, and probably 25 talented students, from lighting to effects to props, put it on. And it was co-directed by our students. And what I saw in that was something so important, the art that was so important to show on our campus, to look square in the eye of the difficult conversations that we need to have on campus. And I also saw students that were more talented than beyond my wildest dreams. Not because I don't think our students are the most talented people in the world, but because I think Hollywood could have taken some lessons from what was exhibited on our stage the evening that I saw it. And I'm pretty sure I saw it on the opening evening. Somebody's going to correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure I saw it there. Just an experience I wouldn't miss. And then just 2 weeks ago, we had the chance to host a social mobility symposium on our campus. And we had national leaders. We had Nasser Pater, the Assistant Secretary in the Department of Ed, overseeing higher education, And we had Ben Cheetah, who is a part of that, who is the lead education person at the governor's office. Now, they weren't the most important people speaking. Don't tell them I said that, because, you know. But they were two significant people that were part of the whole tapestry of what it means to move forward in making sure that higher education is rebuilt. It looks at much further and well beyond who we keep out, and to who is a part of higher education and how we further those. And one of the things that was so amazing for me in having those folks sit in our audience is that they heard us. They were part of listening to people from our campus and other campuses talk about what needs to happen in government at the federal level and the state level to move this forward. And also, I always learn from these moments so much more about what needs to happen on ours. And we talked about how great Dr. Allen is and how amazing he is. And I have to add to the chorus and what he teaches me each day. And he helped frame the remarks I gave in the opening there, in that social mobility has been around for a long time. Many people have pushed their way through higher education in spite of all the barriers that we as an industry put in front of them. And that's not really what we want to think about when we think about in terms of social mobility. We want to celebrate those individuals, those pioneers. But we also know, and Dr. Allen helped me frame these thoughts, is that we have to rebuild this system so that people don't have to persevere despite the barriers we put in front of them, but that we have to rebuild this. And I was honored that we had this symposium here and that so many of you really are the leaders in helping build that way. I do believe from the bottom of my heart that higher education is long overdue for transformation. From the very beginning, from the very first moment that higher education started in our country, right there at Harvard. And I won't go into all I could say about Harvard right now. But the idea has got to leave us of the exclusivity that this is only for middle and upper middle class people and in the traditionally white males. And that we rebuild it so that not only does everybody have an opportunity to be here, but it's built for you, our students, to thrive here. And I know that that is the work that we are going to keep reaching for. And I don't in any way come to you in all my humbleness to say that we have seen the promised land. We have work to do, and I appreciate that each one of you is committed to being part of that work. And as I look out, it's hard for me not to shout out so many of you, and I'm going to resist today because I've already taken more than my allotted time at the podium, I know. But one of the things I get to do that's so rewarding as a president is I get to present the President's Student Champion Award for Inclusive Excellence and Diversity right here annually. We recognize a student for outstanding achievement in areas of diversity, educational equity, inclusive excellence, and social justice. This year's recipient is Paula Yadira Serrano Tovar. And Paula, while you make your way here, I'm going to tell this audience a little bit about you, if you'll give me that opportunity. And I'm so excited about this table right here that I think the whole room is excited for you, but I have a feeling this table is really excited for you. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Paula. And, you know, she is really a shining star within our university community. For the last 2 years, Paula has served as a peer mentor and ambassador for our Dreamer Resource Center, where she has co-led workshops and coordinated events for students, staff, and families. Her involvement in the International College and American Language and Culture Institute program in her last academic year is just a testament to her commitment to intercultural understanding and global engagement. As a student ambassador, she not only facilitated a virtual cultural exchange with Japanese students, but also exemplified her ability to bridge cultural divides, encourage meaningful dialogue, and promote cultural awareness. And as a member of the Study Abroad leadership team, she supported a welcoming and inclusive atmosphere for our international students, helping them discover engaging events, plan activities, and foster a sense of community within CSUSM and our broader region. Currently, Paula holds the position of treasurer for Club Human, a student organization dedicated to providing a platform for amplifying student voices, particularly those belonging to minority groups or affected by immigration status and their allies. Thank you so much for moving us forward. And Paula has been recently selected as a researcher for the Compassion and Care Economy Action Research Project led by our very own Dr. Ranjita Basu. Josefina Espino, Office Coordinator of the Dreamer Resource Office, who is a hero in her own right, wrote the following about Paula. Paula's contributions to our university community are nothing short of outstanding, as she possesses an innate ability to foster an environment where individuals from all backgrounds feel heard, valued, and empowered. Clearly, Paula, the impact that you have had while a student is far-reaching. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for your commitment to foster an environment where individuals from all backgrounds feel heard, valued, and empowered. Your leadership, your passion, your sense of social justice, and your commitment to educational equity reflects the core principles of our university. It is such great pleasure for me that I get to award you the President Student Champion Award for Inclusive Excellence and Diversity. Congratulations to you, and thank you for the example you set for our university and for all others to follow. Thank you, Paula.
Sorry, I'm really short. Anyways, I do want to say good afternoon for starters, and I do want to say thank you to the committee, everyone that's present today, staff, faculty, my family, and my friends that are present. And, you know, it's just, the presence itself is really amazing. And I am really grateful and honored to be able to be here too as a student and, you know, just being part of this as well. I will be giving my speech both in English and Spanish, so please bear with me, especially because I'm kind of nervous. So, como había dicho antes, quiero agradecer mucho pues, al comité, a la gente que está participando, los que ayudaron a hacer la ceremonia también, a mi familia y mis amigos que están presentes y todos que están presentes igual, pues porque se hizo, ¿no? Y pues muchas gracias por todo. So, y también estoy un poco nerviosa y sí voy a hacer la presentación en inglés y en español. Okay? So, ¿quién les enseñó a amar? Para mí fue mi mamá, mis hermanas, mi tía y mi familia. Y los amigos que he hecho a lo largo del camino. He sido muy afortunada por haber recibido un amor tan incondicional, especialmente durante los periodos más difíciles de mi vida. En mi familia el amor nunca ha faltado y siempre ha estado presente y disponible para cualquier persona que nos hemos encontrado en la calle o pues, los que nos cruzamos con, ¿no? Y lo que aprendí fue que el tipo de amor que crecí viendo y que estábamos haciendo en mi hogar se llamaba la compasión. Y lo curioso que aprendí es que la definición de la compasión y el impacto del cuidado fue en una clase de economía, porque yo ni sabía lo que estaba haciendo, tenía una palabra. Y me habían preguntado esa pregunta en la clase, es ¿quién les enseñó a amar? Y fue de hecho la profesora Basu. Y el propósito que nos hizo la pregunta era para que nosotros como estudiantes comprendiéramos el impacto de la compasión y aprender cómo era la definición. Y aprendimos que la compasión se define como una respuesta emocional, especialmente a la angustia de otra persona y querer una voluntad genuina de aliviar ese dolor y ese sufrimiento de otra persona sin esperar ningún tipo de reconocimiento, en viendo la humanidad en uno en el otro. Nos explicó que necesitamos compasión para resolver las injusticias, ya que la justicia social no puede existir sin la compasión. Por eso estoy tan agradecida con mi familia y mis amigos, Afina y el espacio de los Dreamers Resource Office, por darme compasión y poder comprender mi situación y la situación de los demás. Porque como estudiante y mentora, entiendo lo importante que es guiar y tener compasión, especialmente en los espacios que servimos y abogamos por. La compasión es esencial, especialmente cuando tratamos de construir una comunidad segura y inclusiva y diversa. Como dijo mi artista favorito, deberíamos de amar porque cuando amamos nunca vamos a perder nada. Así les pido a los demás que por favor guíen sus espacios, sus lugares con comprensión y con mucho amor. Sorry. So, who taught you to love? For me, it has always been my mom, my sisters, my aunt, and my family, and the friends that I've made along the way. I have been so fortunate to have been loved so unconditionally, especially during the hardest periods of my life. In my family, we never see love as something scarce. It was always present and open to anyone who we encountered and as we walked down the street. What I learned was that the type of love that I saw growing up and the type of love that we were doing was called compassion. The funny thing is that I learned how to define compassion and the impact of care in an economics class. You know, I'm used to seeing numbers, so it was just a new understanding of it. And so the thing is that in the beginning of our course, we were asked who taught us to love, and that question was actually brought up by Dr. Basu, who was trying to let us or teach us to understand the impact of compassion and the impact of care it has to those around us. See, I learned to define that compassion is an emotional response to another person's pain and the genuine response to want to alleviate that suffering without expecting any form of reward, because we see the humanity within one another. And she explained to us too that we need compassion in order to solve social injustice. As social justice can't exist without compassion. It goes both one way or another. It's like hand in hand. So that's why I'm really grateful to my family, my friends, FINA, and spaces like the Dreamers Resource Office, the student centers that we have, other organizations on campus, because as a student that has benefited from compassion and as a peer mentor, I understand how important it is, especially when we have to lead these spaces and we want to create these safe and inclusive and diverse spaces. So that's why I want to say, or like one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite artists is saying how we should always love, because when we love, we will never lose. So hopefully out of today, when everyone goes back to their spaces, their offices, please lead with compassion and care, because it will help a lot of like students or anyone just to feel included and safe. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Fantastic. We're going to move into not so fast. Okay. Slow down, Billy. We're going to gently appreciate our student and her contributions to this campus, this community, and also her family for making so many rich love deposits into her life. Thank you. Okay. speaking about compassion, have you ever made a friend? Have you ever made a friend? When I was younger, I'm not going to get into this, but when I was younger, I used to make people be my friend. Okay, I thought that's what it meant. And what I'm doing right now is I'm making our keynote speaker be my friend. Okay? It's my pleasure. She says she is. I've already convinced her. Yay. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kathleen Wong Lau, who just arrived. Literally, she caught a plane. She just got here about 2 hours ago from Cal State University East Bay. She's the University Diversity Officer there, providing vision, strategic direction, and support in similar ways to me, but in better ways, often, I would say. And she's also building relationships with the surrounding communities there and up in Northern California and everywhere she goes. She's also served as Chief Diversity Officer at San Jose State University with our provost when he was there in an associate provost capacity. She served as the Executive Director of the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity in Higher Education, also known as NCORE, the Director of the Southwest Center for Human Relations Studies, a faculty member at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I thought that was the place they only made guitars. She's currently the co-investigator of a $3.5 million grant from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which focuses on establishing national Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander behavioral health Center of Excellence in the U.S. and the Associated Pacific Islands. Dr. Wong currently serves as co-chair with me, yours truly, leading the Senior Diversity Officer Steering Committee for the 23 campuses. I'm so happy to serve with her. I learn so much every time we meet. She's a native of Hayward. She was a returning learner at 30. That's when she received her BA from CSU East Bay, and then she went on to complete her master's and doctorate at Arizona State University. And she established the Asian Pacific American Studies program as a graduate student there during that time. Early in her journey, she was a bilingual advisor for community-based TRIO programs serving Southeast Asian refugees in San Francisco's Chinatown, Tenderloin, and Mission District. She was also a union butcher in Oakland, California, Local 120. Is that right? Yeah. Be careful. She's got skills. She's bilingual in Cantonese and is a second-generation Chinese American descending from working-class immigrants from Hong Kong who migrated to California in the 1950s. She and her partner have two grown, that means adult, children. I think they mean the same thing. Well, not necessarily. Two rescue dogs. She also provides loving care for elderly living parents. Today, Dr. Wong will bring perspective and concepts regarding self-care and community care. Please join me in welcoming my colleague and friend, Dr. Kathleen Wong.
I want to say thank you, friend. I need a few seconds just to set up my laptop here, but I do want to say that it's an honor to go after all of the speakers today, but particularly to go after Paula Yadira Serrano Tovar for what you spoke about in terms of compassion and care. And so I'll be speaking about it a little bit differently, but I feel like you were the sort of the opening act, and I've got a hard act to follow. So thank you so much for all your wisdom. Really appreciate it. Okay, so give me a second. Yikes, sorry about that noise. I also am a little bit nervous because I'm talking about something I think that is something that I continue to process and has been very difficult, but I think it's important to share because it's been an important part of my learning process, even at my ripe old age of 62. I'll be 63 next week. So I'm at a reception on campus chatting with a community member. I'm asked how many siblings I have. I answer 2, an older sister and a younger brother. I feel a familiar feeling of grief these days, mostly which walks 20 feet behind me. But now, at this reception, it has taken a place by my side, matching me step for step throughout the rest of the reception. For many of us, grief and loss is a companion that journeys with us for much of our lives. What I did not share with this community member is that I lost my younger brother and only brother to COVID in March of 2020, back when all the shutdowns had started, when we didn't know if masks really worked, where we didn't know if we would have a vaccine. He died while on a business trip, states away from all of us, when airports had just shut down. His sudden passing and the days of logical uncertainty surrounding his death so far from home on a ventilator, with no loved ones near him, shattered my family, especially my elderly Chinese immigrant parents. At the same time, in the Bay Area and in New York and other areas where many Asian Americans lived, there was a growing epidemic of anti-Asian violence, with the elderly in our community particularly as the primary victims, with most of the attacks being very serious, often marring lives and abilities as well as being fatal. I, like many other Asian Americans, had started telling our elderly parents not to go out shopping alone. I had a coworker who had someone try to ram her car in a Costco parking lot in Fremont, with a white man in a pickup truck yelling at her to go back to China and take the Kung Flu with her. My own children made me stop going out on my cherished 3 times a week morning runs because they were worried about my safety. I'm sharing this with you because my journey to understand my own grief and subsequently my own self-care led me to a clearer understanding of what care really means and what carelessness means within a framework of systemic equity. I remember being told by many kind people that I need to take some time off for self-care. And I remember thinking that no amount of spa days, long walks, or even nice runs would address the grief and deep loss that I felt and that my family felt. For I had to continue to suffer not just a personal loss, but a loss in faith in humanity, a loss of sense of trust in our society, and the belief that the arc of justice will take us to a better place. I felt like I had lost my faith in other people. My grief was interwoven with a lifetime of experiences of systemic racism, poverty, misogyny, from a society that seemed unable to find its moral compass. Caring for myself seemed to be an impossible goal. Now, you're probably wondering if I misunderstood the assignment for this luncheon. Like, why is she bringing all of this deep grief and loss up at a luncheon meant to celebrate and uplift? I urge you to stick with me so that I can get us to that point, because I want us to think about self-care and community care, and particularly the importance of understanding framing self-care and community care within systemic relations of justice and commitment. Now I need to go to these slides, sorry. Am I aiming this correctly? Oh, there we go. Okay. So what we know from a lot of research, and I think some of you probably have seen a lot of literature and research on these topics, we know that women of color and many people from marginalized communities have experienced a lot of stress, not only in their personal lives, but really from a lot of social relations and inequities that are suffered in society. And so I won't read through all of these statistics, right? But what you need to learn is that death and loss, even if it's not within your personal circle, has an impact that ripples out, right? Especially those that are unjust. And I think that we're living in a time right now where we understand this in a very visceral sort of way. And a lot of times on campuses and as people who practice equity work and people who are counselors, people who are mental health counselors, we forget that just because you weren't directly impacted, it doesn't mean that you don't suffer grief and loss, right? Anyone ever experienced that? It could have happened to a neighbor, someone in your neighborhood, something you see on the news, right? Has anyone ever felt that? That you sort of feel this sense, you have a hard time sleeping, maybe you're losing your appetite, and maybe you don't want to engage in the ways that you feel like you might want to with your friends and with your family. Some of us might withdraw, right? And so it's important to know that for many communities and many people, loss and grief has been an ongoing battle for generations, right? When we're talking about things like incarceration, police brutality, enslavement, colonialism, all of these things impact us, right? And so again, otherwise, stay with me. We're going to get to the point where we're going to talk about community care. But it's important to recognize that, because a lot of times when we try to do programming or counseling, we try to fix what's immediately there. We try to address it. And what we don't do is provide space for systemic processing, right? And historical processing. Historical trauma needs to be dealt with historical frameworks, and care needs to be dealt with in historical frameworks as well. Many of you probably know, I've talked a lot about how it's important for people to think about how these issues affect us in terms of burnout, in terms of our work, in terms of life just outside of just our personal lives. We don't leave it at the door, right? It comes with us and it comes with our families. And so it's important, again, to recognize that. What's really hard is sometimes the onslaught is so much that it makes it really hard to deal with it in the moment, right? When we look at Asian Americans in terms of anti-Asian hate, here's some of the statistics on the impact of hate that I talked about in my opening piece, right? People feel afraid to leave their house. People don't feel safe going shopping. People don't feel safe even parking. I know people that are still dropping off their kids that are Asian American because they're afraid they're going to be beaten up on their way to school, right? So this has lingering effects, and some of it is real, it's based on real incidents, and some of it is that sort of lingering, right, sort of trauma that occurs. So grief, loss, burnout, and historical trauma, it's experienced nested within our histories, our community histories, as well as our family histories. This is a quote from someone from New Zealand who was an activist. Shouting self-care at people who actually need community care is how we fail people. Think about that. When we're talking about self-care, when we're talking about community care on campus, telling people that you just need to take care of yourself better silences people's experiences, right? So it doesn't make it safe for you to present that actually what I need is connection with other people. But especially during the pandemic, when we're used to working from home, we're used to using a lot of our services not in person, we've gotten into the habit of not really connecting with other people. And so community care and connection during this time is even more important. So community care means recognizing first that many don't have the time or money to engage in what I call the commodification of care, right? There's a lot of products out there. I mean, you can scroll, I look across my social media scroll, there's all kinds of products and things that I can buy, experiences that I can buy. But those things, when maybe temporarily in the moment, provide some care, but they're not gonna provide the long-term care when you re-engage back right after you've come back from the spa and stuff. And so what we want is really care that provides nourishment to our soul and our community by connecting and providing mutual aid and mutual connection with other people. That's the type of community care. Now, I think that just from listening today, Paula and her work, a lot of the leaders that were mentioned here, your Office of Diversity, all of the folks who are in there, and many of you who are in this audience today, you're providing that type of community care. And so this talk may not stimulate you to do work differently than you're doing, but it'll hopefully help you frame it differently in your head. And that's important, because it's important to see the efforts that people make, like Paula, like your president and other people, that it is actually a form of connection and care that often is wrapped in an understanding of systemic inequity, right? If we provide people systemic care, what that means is I see you and what you have suffered and what you've experienced, but I also know that you're suffering along with other people, but you're also not responsible for that suffering. It's really about the systems that we need to address. And that relieves people of sometimes the self-blame, the grief at sort of feeling like, you know, I'm not good enough, perhaps, or maybe I just need to be stronger. In actuality, I just need more mutual care. I need to reach out to other people. And what research shows also is that when we reach out and support other people, we also get a lot ourselves. And I'll be talking a little bit about that in a mutual aid group. Okay. So racial trauma impacts Black Americans. We know that, it's nothing new. Finally, in the last about 15 years, it's recognized by the American Psychological Association. It's recognized by practitioners, probably not enough practitioners, but what we know is that you cannot provide therapy without addressing, again, historical trauma, right? And that's something that's really important to know for professionals, especially. For many people of color, the fear and the exhaustion and the constant grief that comes at us regularly, it piles up, right? And it networks with other types of grief. So people of color are often grieving a loss of hope and safety in addition to the loss of a person's life, in the case of my family, right? And in the case of many of your families as well. So I want to give you a reference here. This is called the CARE Manifesto. I love this book. I stumbled upon it as I was doing research. When I was asked, actually, I was invited to go to Taiwan to go to a critical studies conference to present on critical care. What does it mean? What does community care mean? And this is a book that, it's a very short book, so for those of you that don't have that much time, I think it's got about maybe 80 pages. It's really a thin, tiny paperback. But we live in a world of organized carelessness. Think about that. We live in a world of organized carelessness. We have structures and schedules that are designed to make it very hard for us to express and show and enact care with each other. Think about your daily routines. Think about the ways in which we organize. And so when on my campus, I think about how do I structure caring? How do I structure opportunities for caring? Not mandatory caring, not making everyone care, but how do I structure opportunities for caring so that it's easy for people to provide caring activities and caring, sort of nurturing actions towards each other, right? The organized carelessness and all the activities takes up so much of our time that we don't have time to think beyond ourselves when we provide self-care, or maybe just our friend, maybe the people who are just in our proximity. It's harder to even think outside of your own family some weeks, right? I'm sure some of you can relate. So when we do squeeze out care, it is highly individualistic, disconnected rather than interconnected, and does not lead to greater systemic change. They also come up with this term called care washing, right? So it's the act of an institution, a company, an organization that commodifies care and shows a performance of caring such that people feel kind of bad because they're like, well, yeah, I guess my company cares. They're doing all these caring things, but yet you don't feel cared for, right? And so that's care washing, right? And I think that's a great term. When I ran across that term, I was like, oh my gosh, how much of the work are we doing on our campus that's actually care washing? It's not really thinking about people as rooted in systems and community, right? I want to talk about care within a framework again of systemic inequities, and I want to share a little bit about the grant that Dr. Allen mentioned. So when I got this grant, I was awarded at San Jose State right before I took a new job over at CSU East Bay. So I took the new job, I applied for the job and got it at East Bay because my 90-year-old dad and my 80-year-old mother live with me. Since my brother died, they really deteriorated. And so they live with me and I live in Hayward. So my commute was getting too long. I applied to CSU East Bay. When I got the grant, I thought I would stay at San Jose State with that grant. It's a 5-year grant. So I'm telling you this because I received this grant as a co-PI, a principal investigator, from a non-R1 institution. We are the first non-R1 institution, research extensive institution, to get this grant. And one of the reasons the grant officers told, oh, thanks. one of the reasons the grant officer told me, said, your grant was so different than all the other ones. So we competed, apparently we competed with, I knew we were competing with Stanford because there were people at San Jose State who went with the Stanford team instead of our team. And UCLA, Harvard, University of Michigan, Yale, and there was like, I don't know, 15 others, right? They competed for this grant. The reason why we got it was because I used a radical ethnic studies, my background's in ethnic studies and intercultural communication, anti-colonial framework to look at how, make sure that the Asian Americanists in our group would not colonize and exclude the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander cultural practitioners and other people in our group. That we would not just have them show up as dancers and cultural performers and not actually show up as knowledge bearers and stuff. And for us to do that was going to take constant decolonization. So we designed the whole structure of the grant. And I even called them up and said, you know, this part that we're supposed to do, this part in the budget, can we do it differently? Because we have a different theoretical framework. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, just can we? They're like, go ahead, submit it. Well, we submitted and we ended up getting it. So I share that story because it's important. I think sometimes we underestimate the knowledge that all of us have from the lives that we have lived that are very, very interconnected. Many of us who grow up first generation, working class like myself, you've come up with resilient strategies to understand how to make something out of what you have, right? Even though you have very little. Right? And even though we had a lot fewer resources in terms of grant officers, we were able to land this grant. So I'm tuning my horn a little bit, but it's also the team that I worked with and the faith that we had that we were not going to duplicate what the R1s did. We were going to do what we thought was really important in terms of an equity framework. So I want to share that. So so as a result, if you go to our website, we have a lot of things that are really focused on Native Hawaiians and indigenous ways of knowing. And by the time the Maui wildfires came, we actually now have cultural practitioners that were let into some of the formal federal tents for assistance and stuff. Normally they wouldn't let them in, but because we already had built this center, we had presented some of the research, we were able to work through the federal government to let our cultural practitioners and people in to actually work with communities and increase the number of people that took up some of the resources. So what's important to know is that in the work that we do and the work that we highlight on our website, we also talk about being culturally competent means acknowledging systemic racism for Asian Americans, acknowledging immigration trauma for Asian Americans, that this is part and parcel. It's really important for psychotherapists and other people and counselors to understand that and not make it just an add-on on the end, that it's central to the work. Okay, now I'm going to actually go quickly to the Auntie Sewing Squad. So I want to go back one slide. So mutual aid is another type of community care. How many people know what mutual aid is? Anyone participate in mutual aid groups? Okay, I see a few hands here. This is where you are working with people who are impacted negatively and you are providing services and they're also participating and you have sort of a mutual support. You're actually providing opportunities and resources that sometimes a lot of governmental agencies and institutions that are supposed to provide it are not doing. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Auntie Sewing Squad, which emerged during the pandemic, and I'm actually one of the aunties. Christina Wong is somebody who used to perform over at universities with Asian American Studies programs, and so when the pandemic came, of course, all of her contracts got canceled. She had no income, and then she was like, I guess I'm just gonna stay home and live on as little as I can, but she was sewing masks. I was also sewing masks. A bunch of us are sewing masks because, as you remember, at one point, masks were hard to find. And she put out a Facebook post and said, is there anyone out there that's sewing masks? Because the people are asking me to sew masks, can you sew an extra 10 or something? So some of us started doing that, and then we started using bed sheets and all kinds of things because the fabric stores were closed. No one was selling fabric and stuff. We ended up sewing around, this is the count was at 200,000, we closed at around 300,000 masks, right? And these were the communities that we sewed for. We sent a lot to the Navajo Nation. The Navajo Nation reached out to us and said people were dying, literally dying. They had no masks, or people had like disposable masks and not any that were permanent. We designed all our masks so you can insert the disposable ones in so that they would last longer, that sort of thing. And so we also sent a lot to the border where migrant families were crossing, to nonprofits, and we sent a lot to homeless and house shelters and other places. And so this is just something to show you. So we had a systemic equity framework. We had Walter Reed Hospital requested masks from us. We said no. They were the federal government. They had way more resources than we did. We were mostly academics. It started with mostly academics who were in ethnic studies all over the country. And then it moved to people who were essential workers, friends of ours. It grew to 800 people eventually, 800 aunties. So what we wanted to do was to make sure that we were helping people who were in the most need, right? And so the masks had to be beautiful. They had to look nice. They couldn't look like charity, and they had to be well made, and they had to be safe in terms of design. And that's what we did. We had members of our group that were artists. They contributed their artwork. So I'm wearing this pin that was made by, designed by an artist from our group. Some people couldn't sew even if they took lessons. We did Zoom lessons, and so they did artwork and what we call also auntie care. Auntie care, this is a form of radical care. With this auntie care, people also sent a lot of information about different activist meetings that were happening. They sent literature. People would send books. I remember on radical change to each other. We had an exchange network, and that was to take care of ourselves. But also what we said was simple care is not enough. What we need is community care, and it's got to be within a framework of justice. And I can tell you, when a package came, it felt so wonderful, because I would also get like buttons and stickers that talked about, radical change or about other things or about systemic change, as well as maybe a nice jar of jam. So, yeah. So we also captured this history. So many of us learned to sew because our parents, our grandmothers and aunties were in sweatshops working in the garment industry. That's how I learned. I learned from my grandmother, who spent decades sewing, right, doing piecework. Many of us did. And so we incorporated that history. We talked about it. We had Zoom meetings where we had ally groups amongst aunties. I remember that there were a small number of white aunties who held an ally meeting because they wanted to know how they could stand up and help us virtually in terms of standing up for aunties of color. We gained literacy and built relationships with the Navajo Nation to the point where we were doing sewing Zoom things with them, as well as sending vans with supplies and things that we had gathered. We even raised money for sewing machines and sent a whole bunch of sewing machines in a van up to the Navajo Nation so that they could sew skirts and other things that they wanted to have. So, what I want you to know is the overview is that this was a mutual aid group that was not funded by any sort of fundraising. This was just done by people donating very, very little. Like, I don't think I donated, most of the fabric that I sewed was donated to me by other people that they cleared out of their closets and stuff like that. The self-care stuff and baked goods, that's things that people had in their cupboards. And so we had a network of 800 people. We had sewing camps for kids. We sent sewing machines to a couple of community colleges so that LGBTQ students could learn to sew to modify their clothing, so that they could feel more like they really belonged and that the clothes that they wore really fit. We did a lot of different things that we came up with that we vetted as a group, and we would vet it online during Zoom meetings and stuff. Okay. We lasted for 504 days when we decided we were going to stop sewing masks because masks weren't needed anymore, right, at the same level. And so we retired. We had retirement parties all over the country. And then we continued to do mutual aid, right? And so one of the ones we're working on right now, and I have an example of one that I made, is a bag for migrants who are crossing the border. So I think the last time we sent was about 700 of them. They were designed by one of the mutual aid organizations down there, asking us to sew it with specific dimensions so people can carry their documents, as well as other things on the bottom of the bag and have a drawstring and stuff like that. So that's what we're doing. We're also doing like sewing camps up in Navajo Nation. to teach younger women to sew for ribbon skirts and stuff like that. So I share this. It's a long story to share sort of the Auntie Sewing Squad, but I want to tell you that the Auntie Sewing Squad saved my life. I lurked for a long time, but when I started sewing, it helped my grief heal. And it was the sense of connectedness that's really important. So the activity that you do doesn't have to be something like sewing, but it has to be something that has meaning and gives connection to other communities outside of your own comfort zone as well as outside of who you are. So as I finish my talk here, I want you to think about, what does care really mean when you're putting together a program, you're putting together an internship, you're putting together a group of faculty who are trying to work on something? You should also come up with a care plan to connect each other, right? And so there's the actual program that you have to put together in terms of deliverables, but one of the deliverables should be community care. And you need to put it together so that you can replicate that, like a toolkit for community care for the activities that you do. Because now more than ever, we need to be connected, and we need to be connected in a way that we can feel safe to talk about the things that are troubling us in our communities, and also in ways that we can be allies as well as recipients of care. Thank you very much.
Hey, we are at the hour almost. Thank you again, Dr. Wong, Kathleen Wong. Wow. So just to conclude, to bring this afternoon full circle, community matters, and you all make a difference in each other's lives. And if you don't think you do, ask somebody. And I bet you'll find out that you do. Let's be intentional about letting people know we appreciate them. Let's take action to deconstruct systems that prevent us from caring for each other. And I want to just thank you all for being here and celebrating this moment of our students' success and all people. All right. Have a great afternoon, everyone.